We have to plan it into our family. And one of the ways in which we can do it is around the meal table when we sit together and we have meals together. One of the things that Diane used to initiate when we were around the evening meal, and this is just one of a little idea, I'm not sure where Diane picked it up, but we used to have occasional kind of nights where she would put a bowl in the middle of the table and fill it up with goodies, you know. And what we would have to do is we have to get a little goodie and we'd pop it in the mouth of someone else, and the kids used to do this as well, pop it in their mouth and just say something that we appreciated about them that day. I really think it was great that you helped Mum cook tonight, you know, even if they made a bigger mess than, you know, than Mum would normally make, you know. And they're just little things that you can do that actually help connect with your kids and you share an appreciation. I remember once my mum and dad came and Diane decided to have this around the table when my mum and dad were there. And Dad and I were not that kind of close, you know. I mean, we appreciate each other, but we never talked about feelings or anything like that. So that night, I grabbed something out of the little bowl and I popped it in my dad's mouth. And I said, Dad, I just want to thank you for being a good dad. And my dad got all teary, you know. And that was I've never forgotten that because it was a special moment for me to actually say that to my dad. Now, families, we need those connecting times where you touch each other's lives. And I just want to say to you as families, for goodness sake, protect your family togetherness around your mealtime. Now, Diane and I have TV meals because there's only two of us. You might say, well, that's naughty, Maurice. You know, you got to talk to your wife. You know. But for your families, you've got to protect those times where you actually build closeness and relationships with each other and talk to each other. Really important. Secondly, in verse 7, it says here, talk with them when you walk along the road. Well, I'm not sure how many of you walk along the road with your kids nowadays. So let's call it drive time. Because most of you drive your kids somewhere. You know, you drive them to this and you drive them to that and you drive them somewhere else, you know. And you can use those drive times to actually have good conversations with your kids. I remember in our family, one of our daughters, we went through a period of time where there was a very tense relationship with our daughter, and you couldn't talk at all with her. Right? And one day I totally lost my cool with her. You know, I lost it with her. We had a real ding-dong confrontation. Later that afternoon, I had to take her somewhere in the car. So I used the opportunity to actually apologise to her. And we ended up, to my absolute surprise, having a conversation about the fight that we had had in the confrontation and why it had happened and what was going on when that happened. It was a great opportunity to have a discussion as we drove along. It's like she was a captive audience and couldn't get out of the car, so we could actually have a conversation together. When you drive along with your kids, talk to them about things. Can't always do it, but one thing you can do is talk sometimes. Thirdly, it says in verse 7, when you lie down. In other words, use bedtimes to teach your children about Jesus or talk to them about the day. I think this high fives little gimmick is a great idea. This guy that Sheena and Zane and I went to, he was enthusiastic about this idea of having putting structure somehow into your bedtime with your kids so that you could follow it through. And his high fives were a little different there. He had a scripture reading in there. And you can add that in. You can read a Bible story first, and then you share a high or you share a low, and then you can pray. And what it does actually, when you share a high and you share a low, what that often does is then give you something to pray for. Because you're sharing something personally about yourself. And parents, when you do that with your kids, you don't just get the kids to do it. You have to do it too. Which sometimes for us dads is very challenging. Because when you share a high and you share a low, you start talking about feelings. You know, the low for the day. Well, I was feeling really down this morning because I had a fight with a guy in work or something like this, you know. You can share these lows and these highs. And I just want to encourage you as parents to pick this little high five things up. This guy that we went to hear, he was so enthusiastic about that. He was telling us that he and his wife started doing this with their kids at bedtime when the kids were really young. And they found that even when the kids were getting up into their high teens years, when they came home at 11, 12 o'clock at night, they would barge into the room and sit on the bed because they wanted to do the high fives before they went to bed. And this is when they were teenagers, because they got into this thing of connecting with mum and dad and sharing the highs and sharing the lows and building this kind of this intimacy and talking together and praying together before they went to bed at night. I think it's a great little tool that you as parents can use with your kids and connect with your kids. Really a great thing to do. I actually think it could help marriages. Dads and mums, sometimes we're not very good at talking about our inner worlds. And if you have to share a high and share a low, and then pray for a high and a low, maybe, it might even help marriages if dads practice doing that with their kids. Might open them up a wee bit, eh? All right, first important value. We want to share, we want our kids to know and experience the love of God in our homes. Second value, we want our children to experience and know that we love them. That we love them. Our kids need to know that you love them. They need to know that and experience that. It's not enough for your kids just to have a kind of a head knowledge about, yes, mum and dad love you. Or even if we say we love you, our kids need to have that sense of experiencing that from you. And it comes out of this, when you build that sense of closeness or connectedness with your kids, where you build times of intimacy in your relationship together. In the latest Grapevine, there's actually quite a good little article. It's an article titled "The 60-Minute Family." You should read it. It's really good. And the author of this article writes this. He said, "I love the story about a little boy who says to his father, 'Daddy, what are you writing in that book?' And the father says, 'This is my appointment diary. I write in here the appointments I have with important people.' And the little boy asks, 'Am I in that book, Daddy?' And sometimes daddies need to wake up and say, I need to put my little boy in my appointment book. Third important family value is we want to create a family environment where our home is warm and welcoming and it's a safe, secure place for our kids. And where they know that. The first thing that will give your children a feeling of security in your home is when they have a good relationship with you as dad and a mum. The first thing that gives kids a real sense of security is when that sense of closeness exists between you and your kids, and they know that. There's those kind of connectedness times that happen in your family. Steve Biddulph, who's an Australian writer who writes a lot about dads and boys, he wrote this. He said, "Most child-rearing books these days deal with the task of parenting as if it were a list of management tasks. But if you see your kids as a series of problems, you'll have a terrible time. If, on the other hand, you enjoy them and enter into the fun of being with them, the time will fly. Your children will become really delightful because of your delight in them." There's another writer called Paul White who wrote, "If you dads want to get along well with your boys, you have to learn how to wrestle." And have fun with your kids. Boys especially, they need dads who can fight with them on the floor and wrestle around and have fun with the kids. If you become so intense
about being a good parent and you lay down the law and all the rest of it, and don't have fun with your kids, man, it's hard work. You've got to delight in your kids and have fun with them and connect with them so that